welcome back to Friends on Film, the movie podcast where two friends sit and talk about their favorite things in the world, movies, TV, and everything in between. I'm, of course, Michael, and joining me, as always, is the amazingly awesome Ben. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great today, Michael, and today has been quite the day for me because I cannot wait to let out my thoughts with what we're doing.
Yep, so for those of you who don't know, back when I asked Ben to join the podcast and we were coming up with different ideas, he suggested all the Disney live-action remakes. And so I was like, that's a great idea. Let's do this. So this has been a whole Ben episode, but we also underestimated how long, because I think not to the day, but I think last April is when we started watching.
This, but we did this under the hope that we would probably get this finished before Little Mermaid, but obviously that didn't happen. But either way, we managed to get it in there somehow, and I think then the plan was, maybe we can get this done by Snow White, but something else came up, of course. We can go on and on. We just did the episode then at that point because why not?
Well, yeah, and so what is today's episode is going to be on the Disney live action remakes. We are going to rank them, we're going to give them a letter grade. We're going to say where we would rank them. We're also going to be making it very, 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 very clear. Nobody involved with this production, unless it's been revealed they are a bad person, is a bad person. They may have just made a bad movie or they made a good movie. Do not harass these guys. In fact, a lot of these creators have gone on or have made incredible works, and whatever happened, we will never know.
Yes, and any of my friends out there who know me in these movies, yes, I'm not gonna say I approach these movies with hatred, but I definitely approach these movies with not the best mindset. And some of y'all might be surprised. Now that being said, there's gonna be a lot I'm gonna pour out with some of these movies, but only time will tell.
Absolutely. And so just to clarify though, we are not doing the Glenn Close 101 Dalmatians movies.
Or the what was it? The Stephen Sommers Jungle Book movie that he did back in the 90s.
Yeah, we're not doing those ones. We're going specifically when Disney started remaking these back in the 2010s. And
started right at 2010.
Starting right 2010 and how it went. And we are also going to acknowledge something very interestingly. Some of these movies actually have aged pretty well.
Some of them actually I didn't even see, and I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were.
And some of them have gotten better with age. There may be one or two elements there, but otherwise, I think overall, I don't mind them as much as I did. I think it was just this idea of, you're remaking my childhood, how dare you? But now that I've stepped back and go, okay, but it really wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, and there's also the business end. They make movies they make money so they can make movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, if they're making money to make another Moana, to make another Soul, to make another Avengers Endgame.
And we don't mean sequel-wise, we mean the next big thing out there.
Absolutely. We are okay with them doing this.
Yes.
We just are going to be critiquing what did and didn't work about it. But I'm also going to do my best to avoid something I've done as a critic that a lot of people do is, oh man, if you had done this or this or this, it could have been interesting. I'm going to do more of what was the filmmaker trying to do.
Yeah.
And now we get to start it off with
Alice in Wonderland. Or, if I had to bring up real quickly, as Tim Burton reworked it into Underland.
With Alice in Wonderland, for me, I put this in the B tier. It's a good movie.
Yeah, we're gonna put this. I put this in B2 because this is, I want to say around this point, this was about a year or so after Tim Burton had done Sweeney Todd. So yeah, Tim Burton was definitely riding his 2000s high for a while, and then this was the movie that I guess people were starting to say, they're starting to feel the Tim Burton fatigue, and you could argue that a little bit with this movie. Now, that being said, it is still a creative as hell movie.
Oh, it is. Going into what I think doesn't work at first, I don't think Alice is all that interesting a character.
No.
And I partially wonder if that's based on the acting. I do. Who was the girl who plays Alice again?
Mia, it's not Wachowski. It's.
Real quick, we're gonna look this up.
Yeah, we've got
editor
technology.
Michael changed to cut this out. Alice, played by Mia Wasikowska, I believe that's how you say her last name. She is a good actress. In fact, we will talk about that later on. But here in this movie, she's very one note throughout. And I can't help but feel like partially that's on the direction. I think the writing does lend to it, because something I will give credit for Tim Burton. I know a lot of people complain about it being a chosen one story.
Yes.
But I think it makes sense because it's reflecting Alice's mindset and how she's feeling about the world and trying to grow up.
Exactly.
And while she isn't the strongest part about the movie, I do appreciate that. But yeah, Mia's not at her strongest in this one, but she has gotten way better as time has gone along.
She's kept afloat by the fact that she's kind of not kind of, that she's working around, a little more experienced actors. Case in point, Johnny Depp, and at one point even Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh yeah, well, and Depp and Carter really bring their A game to this movie. I think my only issue is I don't like how colorless a lot of the world works. We're going to get into this because most of the live action remakes do this.
Yeah.
But this is a big problem with movies. They are doing this thing where, like, when things are sad or everything, it becomes gray and dull. And
yes, that's one way you can look at the world when things aren't going well. But the thing is, the world isn't all that gray every now and then.
And also, can we do something more visually interesting? I will throw out this. I was watching Chicago yesterday, which does have a lot of those gray and blue color patterns. But the characters are dressed in very bright colors, or there's very specific color choices to help break it apart.
Yeah.
So it visually looks incredible.
Exactly.
I feel like if you're going to do this, you need to do that more. And I feel like Wonderland, you could have really done that too.
Yeah.
But Burton, you can feel his touch in every frame of this, and if it really feels like the style is there, it feels very grand, very epic. Overall, like, this is a solid film. I would say that if Mia was a bit more experienced as an actor and had that chance, I think the Chosen One story would have flowed a little bit better because to reflect her mindset and everything she is in, that could have been more explored.
And if I could make maybe just one, excuse me, I'm battling some nasty allergies. If I could make one thin argument for the whole Chosen One aspect, let's look at it this way. Wonderland is very much Alice in her imagination, right? Well, let's look at it this way. Whenever we're in our own Wonderlands, don't you kind of write yourself as the Chosen One in your own story too? Come on, you and I, we're Star Wars fans. We've all written our like Jedi or bounty hunter stories in our own mind, or we try to dream it up. I'm sure there's a person out there who's got their own fantasy, whether it be Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or just anything.
Yeah.
And they write themselves as the hero of their own story. That's what's going on here. That's the defense I'm making for Alice in Wonderland.
And I also give credit to the way that the world is designed, like the Queen's Court and everything looks great.
Hearts and everything. Like the hearts actually split up, kind of like distorted. That was like such a cool design.
Yeah, and I think and for me, this movie works. I know people have said, oh, but they tried to add rules to a world of whimsy. No, they didn't.
No, they did not. They added these are Tim Burton's weirdness and whimsy.
Yeah,
right
the
here.
weirdness and whimsy, if you're like saying they're adding rules or something, no, they're just adding politics, which you need to do in order to make a big, giant, epic film. And maybe people could argue, well, then just don't make it a big, giant, epic film. Okay, then you don't like Alice in Wonderland's concept in and of itself. It doesn't really work like that.
And let's be real. The whole concept of Alice in Wonderland. Let's just take the whole Chosen One aspect of it. And I think Burton did nail this for a good chunk of it until we get to like the whole rebellious part. But that's something else. It was very much about the weird thing she encountered.
Yeah.
And we do get some of that in the movie.
And I think it's really cool that Burton made the choice of every weird thing she's encountering is reflecting in her mental state and what she's going through, down to when she fights the Jabberwocky, which is criminally only has one line from Sir Christopher Lee.
Yes.
What? Come on, did you really have to cut out the tongue? You could have had him being so cool. But I do see what the Jabberwocky was representing was all her fear, all of the life, and her choosing to cut off its head and choosing to be weird.
Exactly.
Which is why at the end, when she does that weird dance at the engagement party, it's her embracing the weirdness.
Exactly.
But yeah, the best part of this movie is Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, I know some people were probably ragging on him because he was Johnny Depp, and it's like, look, when he can Johnny Depp well, he can do it well. And this is one of those
making
moments.
it more clear in what we mean by that, Depp went very in depth with this character. He was really taking in everything. He embraces the weirdness in such a way that when we see the scene when he loses his village and his family and the look on his face is just pure depression and somberness. It's just powerful and palpable.
Exactly.
And the way he can shift on a dime, you don't know where this guy is going, but you feel his love for every character.
Exactly.
And also Anne Hathaway looks incredible in this movie.
Anne
Everyone
Hathaway
is very
great,
strong. And Alan Rickman voicing the
Absalom, the blue caterpillar. Who are you?
My only thing I would have asked Burton to do if I was giving him a note back, I would say, what if the people at the party are the people in Wonderland to further this idea?
Like
that,
reflects like her, not her insecurities, but reflect the idea of how things and people change around
and
her.
how she's seeing the world and how it can reflect. I think that could have been a really interesting thing.
Case,
Also, you could have brought in all these well-known actors who are voicing all these crazy characters
exactly
into the real world as very prim and proper. It would have been a very cool way to tell the story.
Yeah, case in point, I'll keep this short. We have Tweedledee and Tweedledum in the movie. There are two female characters in the real world who talk almost exactly like them, and how funny would it have been hearing those voices, but with those little what you might call it, Humpty Dumpty faces. Like, how funny would that have been?
Yeah, absolutely. But overall, those are just things we would have told Burton that maybe he could have added in if we were giving notes. But overall, this was a solid decision.
And you know what? Bonus points for actually like making a real PG movie. And that the Queen obviously says off with their head. Now we don't see it, but
we see it.
We do see Alice playing leapfrog over what appears to be a bunch of heads in what looks like the moat to the Queen's castle.
And most of the river in there is red.
Oh yeah, and there's a little mouse later in the movie, and she plucks out a big monster's eyeball with a needle.
Which Alice hands back to the creature to get its respect.
But bottom line, this movie had a punch. This movie packed a PG punch.
It had such a cool punch, and it was so... And it is very well done. And honestly, the more we talk about it, the more I like this movie, and the more I'm okay with it grossing over $1 billion. Yeah,
I'm actually. This was the first. This was their first outing, and while some people can see it as one of their weaker ones, I think it's definitely one of their stronger ones.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's be real. Tim Burton got to be Tim Burton. It's not rare that we get to say that, but it's nice seeing Tim Burton. That's all I can say. I share a birthday with the dude, so.
And now we move on to The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
This one, pleasant surprise doesn't even come close to describing my amazement with this movie.
I had seen this as a kid and not really remembering it, but as an adult, this is directed by John Turteltaub. He is a very criminally underrated director. He's directed National Treasure films. He's directed a lot of good stuff. He has such a creative mind. I'd love to see John Turteltaub do Green Lantern. That's all I'm throwing out,
there we go,
Mr. Gunn. That's who I'm throwing out for Lanterns directors. But with Sorcerer's Apprentice, you have this really fascinating mythological story between Nicolas Cage and Alfred Molina.
Yes.
Who are both excellent in this film.
You totally buy that they had history and that they are at each other's throats with how powerful they are.
Jay Baruchel is the lead in this as David.
Yeah. Bruchel.
Thank you.
Yeah, Baruchel, yeah.
Yeah, David Baruchel is the lead in this. And
Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. There you go, yeah.
And what I think is really... He could come off as really annoying, but you honestly believe this guy and everything he's going through.
Because he snuck into a freaking thrift store and bumped into Nicolas Cage, who also just so happens to be a sorcerer. I don't know how you're supposed to react.
And Nicolas Cage, like his odd mannerisms he does, works for this character who's supposedly hundreds of years old
and really wise, but he's living in a world that's very, he's constantly bringing in illusions to and making sure he's kept secret, but he also wants to make sure he's keeping his own sanity. There's just so much going on with Cage. Like, you could look at this character and be like, it's just Nicolas Cage being stoic and weird, and it's like, no, there is a wizard he is playing, a torn wizard.
And I can fully believe that when he is looking at something or he's figuring out something, he is, exactly what he's thinking without saying it, which this makes it a really top tier performance from Cage. But you also have one of my favorite actors of all time, Alfred Molina, just chewing the scenery very quietly. Like, he is chewing the scenery with just his eyes and stature.
Exactly.
And then I don't know who plays him, but there's a David Bowie-esque character who is his apprentice. And he is so fun in the movie. I really love this. I really loved watching this character and watching these interactions. And you really feel like the stakes just keep getting higher and higher.
Well, I think what makes this movie works is because the characters keep learning new and creative, fun magic from characters who are just kind of like, yeah, this is a bit standard for me, but it's like it's so majestic to us.
On top of it, they really use. I did look this up. They used a lot of CG, but then did a lot of stuff practically as well and combined them beautifully.
Yeah, I remember Nicolas Cage rides a metallic gargoyle at one point in the movies. Which Nicolas Cage riding a metallic gargoyle. How does that not get you excited for one?
And what was so cool was to see just how they used cinematography to really play with it,
Yes.
because they could just keep the camera standard shot and let the effects do the work.
Hmm.
But no, John Turteltaub and whoever the cinematographer was, they chose to really utilize what film can do in a cool way.
The cinematographer was this guy named Bohan Bazelli.
Mm-hmm.
He did movies like The Lone Ranger, The Ring, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as well as A Cure for Wellness, and, which we'll be discussing later on, Peter Pan and Wendy.
Okay, it makes more sense why
Yeah.
the shots are as gorgeous as they are. Because
Yeah.
not all those are great movies, but they are shot beautifully.
We'll get to one in particular in a specific moment, yeah.
But yeah, Sorcerer's Apprentice for me is definitely an A tier.
A tier for me. If I had literally, this is just me being like somewhat, I won't even say nitpicky. This is, if I were a producer, if I saw like if I saw like a test screening of this movie, I'd probably say, hey, maybe move the scene where he does the reference, where we do the reference to the actual Sorcerer's Apprentice
Yeah.
clip. Okay, that should probably, he's doing that like to, before a date, and then Nicolas Cage comes in and he chastises him, but this is like near the end of the movie. That probably should have been something he does in the beginning.
Yeah, I could have seen that more in the beginning, and also it just was kind of done. It's
to be-
not as creative as the rest of the movie. It's not as
But to be-
visually interesting.
But to be fair, if you're going to reference the Sorcerer's Apprentice, if you're going to do it that way, I mean, I could think of worse ways to, I guess, homage and reference stuff.
Oh yeah,
as we will talk about
it's a
later.
shame this movie did not do as well at the box
Really
office.
is a shame. I didn't see this movie back when it came out. It came out in 2010 also. Now, I saw Alice in Wonderland in theaters because I like Tim Burton. When I saw Sorcerer's Apprentice, I just saw the Disney logo. I think I was in marching band in the hot sun, and I just couldn't care less for the movie back then. And I think even then, the last Airbender movie had came out, so I was just burned out on just some bad stuff that had came out around that time. Not that 2010 had a bad summer of movies. I mean, come on, we had Toy Story 3 and Inception that year, so yeah.
Oh man, duality of man right there.
There you go. So.
But yeah, I think that's also fair to say. Sorcerer's Apprentice just got buried underneath a really strong year, and it's a shame because I think if you've never seen it, it's on Disney Plus. Go check it out. It's a very, very fun time.
This felt like, I'm not saying I don't think there was a movie that we're going to talk about where nobody wanted to make this movie, but this movie definitely felt like whenever they came to work, everybody was in a good mood.
Yeah.
It really felt like that.
We now move on to probably the one that's going to be the most polarizing of all of them. We are with Maleficent.
Oh boy.
So just to get this out of the way, this movie is definitely D tier for me.
Yes. If this right here, what we have is a classic case of Wicked wannabe right here. Now, for those who are not familiar with the story of Wicked, I will not give you all the details, just the bare bones, in that it covers the story of the Wicked Witch and who she was before she became the Wicked Witch.
Now, I will say the best part of this movie, hands down, Angelina Jolie is perfect.
She is great as Maleficent. She sells you with the smile. She's got the voice. I wish I heard her, because one of the trailers, they had the song Once Upon a Dream, and it was Angelina Jolie kind of singing this really slow, like very sinister way. I kind of wish we got a musical sequence with her almost, but regardless. And also Elle Fanning, she's decent.
She's good, but we will talk about when she plays Aurora much better later on.
We'll get to there, yeah.
But
definitely will.
Maleficent, I also have this problem of how it's this idea that this character was the mistress of all evil.
Yes.
And then having a character that suddenly, oh, well, she wasn't bad, she was just misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
There are some characters that they actually, we'll talk about them later, that they did do that to. That was actually really interesting and fascinating.
Yes.
But this one feels very much more apologetic than a critique or a look at them.
Like, we're supposed to believe, put it this way, we're supposed to believe that she was good the whole time, even since the original Sleeping Beauty, as this is what you're trying to do. You're setting this alongside the original story of Sleeping Beauty, and that, okay, I don't mean to get into nitpicky spoiler territory, but let me just, here's, what you were saying, misunderstood in all the wrong ways. Here we go. In the original Beauty and the Beast, when she curses Aurora, she just curses her. And
You mean Sleeping Beauty?
I'm sorry, Sleeping Beauty, excuse me, yeah. What did I say?
You said Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, excuse me, oh boy. Okay, in Sleeping Beauty, when she curses Aurora, it's just the curse, and that's it. She leaves the party. And then one of the fairies then does the whole true love's first kiss counter curse. What does she do in this movie? She curses her, and then out of nowhere, decides to counter curse herself. It's like somehow don't worry, that'll work its way later into the movie, right? Because she's evil. We're supposed to believe she turns good for the sake of love for someone that she's clearly has hatred towards.
Mm-hmm.
Just and it doesn't help. It doesn't help that Frozen did something kind of similar to this not too long before this movie came out. It really
And did
doesn't.
it actually way better.
Yes.
And I think and on top of that, Maleficent is just not a very good looking film. It has a lot of those dull grays and blues.
It's got good set design and aesthetic. I
Mhm.
mean, in terms of on that front, the
but the
production
color
design.
grading is truly just like very desaturated. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. You're in a fantasy world. And I really had no hopes for the sequel, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But let's just say that was surprising. But yeah, Maleficent. This is definitely. I almost said this is the worst movie that Linda Wolverton has written, but it's not. For those who don't know, Linda Wolverton, she wrote the screenplays to Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King in the 90s. And she actually wrote Alice in Wonderland, and she wrote this movie, Maleficent, and she's written 2 other movies on this list, which we'll get to.
Oh boy.
And she is going to be writing Vicky Jensen, the director of Shrek's musical film this year, Spellbound.
Okay.
And so I'm excited to see her back here. But out of this is one of her weaker scripts she has written.
Yeah.
I think just because I definitely think there's an interesting idea here. I wonder what if we had not been following it from the story of Maleficent, but maybe another character?
Yeah, like the king, as they were somewhat establishing in the movie, King Stefan.
Even
yeah.
if you want to go as wild as possible, pull a Quentin Tarantino and tell the story through multiple point of views.
Yes, through the fairies, maybe. Oh god, the fairies in this movie.
They're not very fun.
They're
They're kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But I really think, like, what if you ended the movie with Maleficent's point of view?
Yes.
And just tell the story kind of like Pulp Fiction in a chronological way.
Distortion, yeah.
Through different lenses.
Exactly.
That, I think, could have been a really cool way to do it. But otherwise, it's a movie where I think its concept is very flawed, and
yeah, and its
if
character
you can't, and its concept and the flaws of that concept never grew out.
And it's going off of an idea, like I said, it's suffering from Wicked wannabe syndrome. It's like, yeah, but you could we can take the Wicked story and add as much as we want to it, but it's like what you said. It just fails to reach any of its ideas, and it all culminates in something that's just. I mean, let's put it this way: if you've got like say teenage daughters or preteen daughters, and they think this looks cool, like the action and everything, well, that's fine. That's totally fine. But I don't know. I've seen a lot of action, a lot of like gothic stuff over the years, and this was just so generic for me, just like on so many levels. I don't want to keep bashing the movie for being boring, but that's just look, a movie's biggest crime is being boring.
Yeah, that really is just the problem. It's boring.
Yeah.
But now we get into a film that I've gone back and forth on so many times, and now I've come around to loving it. It's Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella.
Cinderella is now one I will say, yeah, I've come around to actually loving it too, but I will have to specify some things, which I will get to later in this. Yeah.
I think we'll talk about the one bad thing, which I can see what they were trying to do. It didn't work out, which is when they lock Ella in the tower and she chooses to dance and just kind of
waits for her prince to save her.
Now, where I see where Branagh was coming from, because beforehand we have this beautiful scene where the stepmother says, "I was once like you, but then I had all this happen to me, and now I'm going to do the same to you." And Ella chooses not to do that, and instead chooses to love instead.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could have been executed better because it feels very Stockholm
syndrome. Not
syndrome.
Just Stockholm, but just very, very dated Disney. And that, we're having a young girl wait for a man to sweep her off her feet.
That's the only flaw.
That's like the one flaw. And if I had to, if that was like my one reservation, put it this way: if I had daughters and if they wanted to see this movie, this would be like the one where I say, "Hey, so about that scene we saw where she did that," I would have to have like a little maybe 5-minute talk with them.
Yeah, just simple talk with it. The rest of this movie is just pure
beautiful.
Brilliance.
It's Branagh beauty. Yeah,
Branagh shot it on film, and it just gives film and digital. Like I don't mind either one, but film just gives you that natural look that really feels powerful. The cast here is incredible. I'd say there is only one other person that captures a Disney princess just as well.
And that is
Lily James in this movie as Cinderella is like literally off the page come to life.
She's Cinderella. And I remember you telling me this, the sequence where Branagh just really understood just how, not just, I wouldn't say epic and grand. Okay, it's grand. Just how, I guess, beautiful, like the whole, like she embraced herself, Cinderella. The whole idea of her being the belle of the ball, like quite literally. For one, she's wearing blue, which has her stand out. But I remember what you told me when they set up the shot. They had all the extras looking the other way so as that they couldn't see Lily James in the dress because they wanted everyone's response to see her to be genuine. So when they did turn around and saw her, they recorded everybody's response. That was legit.
The
When they saw
costume
her,
design
yeah.
is truly, it is one of
It
the most
was, yeah.
magnificent looking things. The other thing that works about this, Richard Madden as Kit, the
Yes.
prince.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, their chemistry is palpable. They really let it sit, and this is one of the best versions of Cinderella and
Yes.
her prince. And I love the way that they built it up. And we get, after we have the whole awkward scene of like, oh, she's let out, she waits for the prince, and but then Kit's there. Before he puts on the shoe, he knows it's her.
Yeah.
This shoe is really just that last symbolic act. I love that scene where they are interacting because you feel like it feels very believable these two have fallen in love.
Yes.
And
Or at least that they've met and gotten some time to like at least know one another, as opposed to have just been meeting one night, which Braun, I think, actually adjusted pretty well. It's kind of like the Aladdin thing, where it's like when he met Jasmine for the first time, it's like, oh, they met in one day, and then over the like course of 2 days, which is what, 2 weeks in Disney years. Yeah.
But I love the way though that this feels like the most that I feel like the live actions have gone to the Disney magic coming to life on the silver screen.
Yes.
Because Branagh combined gorgeous CGI with amazing practical effects.
Those sets to the whole castle were just
pumpkin being
pumpkin
real.
things, yeah. And Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy. She got panned quite a bit for her goofiness. I'm like, y'all, this is Helena Bonham Carter playing the Blue Fairy, and she's saying bibbidi bobbidi
beautifully.
Come on, y'all.
And she plays it so well. Like, you believe that this is a whimsical character.
I guess people wanted an Emma Thompson or Meryl Streep kind of performance out of her, but that's the problem. When you bring in Helena Bonham Carter, you're not going to get that kind of performance.
Yeah.
You can direct her that way, mind you, case in point, the King's Speech, but it's, like I said, it's Helena Bonham Carter. Utilize her. And they did.
And what I think is so wonderful about just the way that everything comes together, like in the original, when she makes the dress, it's just a simple flick, the's the dress.
Yeah.
Here, what does Branagh do? He lets the gorgeous score
up.
swell. He lets the magic surround her,
And she's
it really
twirling. As she twirls, it makes okay, if you're a woman watching the movie, of course, or a little girl, it makes you feel like a princess. I bet. Yeah.
And I think then you also have the gorgeous ballroom dance sequence where it just follows them, which apparently took them 3 weeks to rehearse.
3 weeks to rehearse all that.
3 weeks to rehearse, not to even just set this up and get it to work, but goodness, did it come together in such a beautiful way.
With all those dresses and the way, because okay, I can't imagine, those dresses are beautiful, but I can't imagine they're the easiest to navigate around.
And the other great thing is Cate Blanchett is perfection as Lady Tremaine.
Oh yeah, I mean the stepdaughters, I mean, yeah, they're fine, they're annoying in the best kind of ways, but Lady Tremaine, she definitely took that original design. It's like, okay, we can't make her look like Lady Tremaine, but she can definitely bring that nastiness. Yeah, she can definitely bring that sinister nastiness that she exuded in the original. And that's the thing. I think Branagh was also aware. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Cinderella from the 50s was Disney's personal favorite. I believe,
he
before
personally,
he died.
he personally really loved that movie.
Because it was a movie that was not only really successful, but it was also a movie that just pretty much reestablished Disney as the fairy tale juggernaut that it was. Even though people weren't seeing a lot of movies in the 50s, Disney was here to stay.
Yes.
And they're here to stay to give us these fairy tales. And Kenneth Branagh like just dialed that up. I was like, well, here's my Cinderella fairy tale. Yeah.
Branagh has always been a director who's gone back and forth, but this high that he hits with the live action remakes is truly fantastic. And I actually was shortly after we watched it.
Yeah.
Just coincidentally, so many videos came out that were talking about like Cinema Therapy did a whole episode on it, talking about the psychology of Cinderella in this movie and her relationship with Kit.
Yes.
And then we had somebody else who talked about the costume design, and really people were looking back going,
oh, this movie's actually really good.
This movie was stunning. I actually saw this one in theaters.
Yeah.
And because this is my mom's favorite Disney movie, so she went to go see the remake, of course. And the way that I love when they're like, the glass slipper, and when Helena Bonham Carter said, and you'll find that very comfortable. My mom audibly whimpered, like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it was truly, It really wouldn't. Seeing this in theaters really felt like I was seeing a fairy tale come to life.
Yeah.
Disney, if you're going to keep doing live action remakes, look to this movie.
If
This is what a fairy tale
Yes,
feels
this is
like.
what it feels like it should look like. But if I had one thing to say, and this is not criticism or anything, I think this was also where Disney started to like ask themselves, because here's the thing. When they made Alice in Wonderland, it was very much it was different enough. Let's put it that way, in comparison to the original. Different enough. Then they made Maleficent, which was very different, and that didn't do too well for them, I guess. It did well enough at the box office, I'm assuming, because they got a sequel. Then we got this movie, which was, let's be real, it wasn't that much different from the original too much, except for that one scene. So this is where Disney is like asking themselves, what's working with these remakes? Like,
and
what's
the changes they
like?
did make were slight, but they had such big effects on the movie as a whole. And I mean, getting to see Ella's life beforehand with Haley Atwell playing her mom, which
she was Haley Atwell. Look, she can play it. She's the winner for getting a lot of emotion in a dying scene.
Oh yeah,
not Civil War, Winter Soldier, and yes, Cinderella.
And it truly is a phenomenal film, and really, if you have not seen this, you need to do yourself a favor and just sit back and let the magic of Disney take you over.
Really, actually, if I had just one more criticism, if I'd have to put this, I'd rank this as a B+, because that one scene where it's like, okay, it does bring the movie a little bit, and the other byproduct of that, which is unfortunate, and this was before the sequence, we had maybe 10 minutes of having to build up that, and it's 10 minutes of having to wait through other people.
I think the good of the movie, though, I would say, as not good as that stuff is, I think the ballroom sequence and the ending,
everything overshadows.
For me, it's still A tier because it still has it is utter brilliance. And I think the build up, even though we know what's coming, we're like, okay, can you wrap this up? They still do at least some funny stuff with it. They still do some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I still put it in A.
Okay.
And now getting into another really good movie.
Oh boy.
From Mr. Jon Favreau.
Oh, I know we're going
a director I love. We get The Jungle Book.
So this is a movie I had an interesting relationship with. I went into this movie thinking, oh, maybe Disney can do something similar to the Rudyard Kipling novel, but it's like, okay, hang on. Listen to yourself. You're asking Disney to do a faithful adaptation of the novel.
Which in of itself is very just philosophical and not a lot happens.
Yeah, and so when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, they just kind of redid the original, but just added a few extra things. But then rewatching it with you was like, no, they did the original, and they added some things that were good. Really good.
They started off in a very similar place, but then they let it go off in its own direction.
Yes.
And story-wise, it's brilliant.
Yeah, and the casting is phenomenal. For this,
Mm-hmm.
I talked about this was also around the point where I start kind of rolling my eyes at these remakes, and every now and then I do. But let me just get to the point when I talked about it with my dad, I was like, well, okay, hang on a minute, let's look at the cast. Bill Murray as Baloo, and my dad, he's not the biggest Bill Murray fan, but when he heard that, he was like, yeah, that sounds right. And it was like, okay, Ben Kingsley as Bagheera, okay, that could definitely work. Idris Elba as Shere Khan, oh man, that is 100% surefire. And then this is what put my dad over the edge. He was like, oh, I'm seeing this movie. Christopher Walken as King Louis.
Oh, what a brilliant
That is
moment.
perfect.
I know that some people complain about it wasn't a musical. Why did it sing I Want to Be Like You? Because this movie would have failed if it did not have Christopher Walken singing I Want to Be Like You. I don't care that it doesn't make any sense. The movie earned it.
It's Christopher Walken, y'all. He's allowed to do stuff like that, okay? In the same way Lucas is allowed to bring a lightsaber hilt to every pitch meeting he goes to.
Yes, I'm perfectly okay with that moment not making sense because it hasn't been a musical up to that point. That's it's legitimate that is a flaw.
Yeah.
But it's so well done and so well executed.
How can you, if it's making me smile, how can I hate it?
Exactly. And but on top of that, you see Mowgli's relationship.
Oh, the kid who played Mowgli. Okay, this is his first time working in a big movie. Not just a big movie, but he's working with effects. People wearing frog suits maybe here and there, or the occasional bust or reference or whatever. He's working with these big effects. I believe this kid was talking to those animals all the way through.
Oh yeah.
It's like Babe. It was like in Babe, and that movie has not too many human and animal talking interactions, but I felt the emotions of those animals, and these animals talk, and they're animated with such personality. They're not real, but I believe they are because that kid is making me believe they are. Case in point with Lupita Nyong'o as the wolf, and he's leaving, and then she's like, no matter what anyone tells you, you will always be mine. And I was just like, you can hear Lupita Nyong'o is actually crying in the voice booth, but damn.
And I love, like, the acting throughout this whole movie is spectacular, but really, they shot this all in Burbank on blue and green screen sound stages.
You got some occasional river sequences that were probably hard. Yeah.
Jon Favreau's direction. This is where you can tell he's really known how to work with effects because he got that kid to work, and the shots and cinematography of this movie are surprisingly fantastic.
Great.
The other person we forgot to mention,
Scarlett Johansson as Ka.
Yes, my goodness, what a good moment.
It's okay, a great moment. I probably would have liked maybe another scene with her, a 5-minute scene with her, because I feel like that's okay. I feel like that's kind of doing her dirty by only giving her 1-2-minute sequence where she barely sings "Trust in Me."
Yeah, but she gives this awesome monologue.
She does.
That I can at least go through with it. I think if you guys can tell at this point, it is an A tier movie.
Oh, and one more person. Amazing. Juan Carlos Esposito as Aquila, the wolf.
Yes.
Everyone is great.
Everyone in this movie is just spectacular. The effects of this won an Oscar for a reason.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, I was kind of one of those that's like, yeah, but the darker Andy Serkis film that's a bit more closer to the novels coming out. And I actually prefer this one over what they did with what Andy Serkis did. There's still some cool moments there, but...
And some cool designs to the animals, too, with their actors' faces, but yeah.
Overall, I think that this film, has much stronger emotion, has a lot more heart.
This is a movie that, like, let me also say this. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Jungle Book. I don't hate it. It's just one of those movies I was like, that's kind of a... I don't mean to be that guy, but I was like, that's a kid's movie or something, like meant for like kids ages like 6 and under or whatever. So this is the idea of like taking a kid's movie and expanding upon it, making it universal, I guess, for everybody. But that's not to say the original wasn't like that at all. It's just, this was to me a wild improvement on something that was just kind of all right.
Yeah, for me, I grew up on the original Jungle Book. I love that movie.
My dad actually, he had the freaking the vinyl for that back when it came out.
That's amazing.
That was his favorite.
And I saw
movie.
Jungle Book 2 in theaters.
I didn't see that one. I saw Peter Pan 2 in theaters. I'll get to that one.
But that was But yeah, like, I'm very attached to the Jungle Book, so to see this, I saw this one in theaters
Me too. I saw it with a group of people.
And man, was it just a fun experience.
Yeah.
And just a cool way. And Favreau continues to be one of my favorite directors.
He proves that he's a very not just well-accomplished filmmaker, but why he is a very well-accomplished filmmaker.
Yeah, this film is brilliant, and I enjoy it.
A testament to, like, when great filmmakers are allowed to actually, make a movie with heart.
And now we get into the first of the worst, as I call it.
Here we go. What do we have?
From director James Bobbin, we have Alice Through the Looking Glass. Okay.
I just rewatched this movie last night, and when we first watched it, I think the best way to describe it, it was maddening, to say the least. That's the nutshell.
It was actually, I will say, first of all, it's F tier. It is one of the worst. It's probably Linda Wolverton.
Weakest of the weakest.
It's her weakest script, but hey, I still think she's a good writer. So, Miss Wolverton, I'm not saying anything against you as a writer. This is just the weaker of it. James Bobbin he directed 2 great Muppet movies. He directed the awesome Dora movie.
And he started the awesome Percy Jackson series.
And he is an Emmy-winning director for the Mysterious Benedict Society. Clearly,
so he's a good guy.
This was, I think, his first big studio film.
Yeah.
And, man, the weird thing is there's just not really a vision as to what is going on.
Really, because here's the thing. Not only did I remember this movie being maddening, but yeah, I remember, I just said, I rewatched this last night because I wanted to make sure I had plenty to talk about, but it's like, what is there to talk about? Because, okay, let's first of all get to the actress. What was her name? Mia
Wasikowska, I believe.
Wasikowska. Okay, first of all, her acting has definitely improved tremendously.
She's the best part of the movie.
Yes. Unfortunately, that comes at a cost of everything else being not so great, and unfortunately, it also cost us an Alan Rickman.
This was his final movie.
Last movie.
And
now, this is the setup. So Alice has been told, every now and then there are some things you can't control. It's impossible. And this is one of those, nothing's impossible kind of stories. She goes to Wonderland. And we also learn the Mad Hatter is sad. That's about it. He misses his family.
And Johnny Depp he's doing technically everything right, but he, for some reason, added in this awful lisp.
This awful lisp. He almost sounded like the gremlin from Courage the Cowardly Dog who did the film Not the Slime. That guy.
Translation, he sounded like the gremlin from Courage the Cowardly Dog. And
Yeah.
if you couldn't understand Ben, well then prepare to have subtitles for Alice Through the Looking Glass, because I can't understand a word this guy says.
Exactly.
Most of it.
100%. Like, I don't... Johnny, look, I don't know if it was Amber wearing you down within that time frame. Because, look, here's the thing. He cut his fingertip, and I noticed this in the movie. One of his fingers is covered with, like, a thimble. Now, I don't know if that's a production... If that's an aesthetic thing. Maybe that was in the last movie. It wouldn't surprise me. This movie came out, like, within...
2016.
Yeah, this movie came out during his little turmoil with that woman.
Yeah, but the big issue is, like, in the last movie where Wonderland was reflecting what Alice was going through.
This
doesn't really
do that. Show anything. It just shows, oh, here was Wonderland in this time frame, and everybody was like little freaking Funko Pop head best buddies.
Yeah, the movie jumps back and forth between like 5 or 6 different plot lines, and this movie's only 2 hours, and so it's just stuffing so much in there.
And on top of that, there's also Sacha Baron Cohen, he's trying.
He's giving it.
God bless that man, trying to bring his.
God bless that man as an actor. There's some stuff that may have come out about him that's not exactly.
That
best.
too. Yeah, that's true.
But
yeah.
he himself is.
He's trying to keep the movie afloat as best he can, because he's dying in the movie too.
And I will give credit: the production design and the effects team are going as hard as they can. I can imagine this movie was not easy to make.
The movie was very bright. I do remember that. This movie has a more brighter color palette compared to the Tim Burton movie, but it doesn't have a very it doesn't have very good focus in terms of a weird story. But
I'm actually kind of annoyed. This is one of those few movies that doesn't do the blue and gray color palette when things get dark. They actually do interesting aesthetic choices on top of that. But man, why is this the movie that does what I wanted to do, but it's not a very well thought out film? And it's a shame, because I think there could have been something here, but I really feel like they needed to pull a Pixar and Disney and storyboard out the film more, and then get feedback from other filmmakers on what to do. And
maybe on top of that, maybe get not a couple other screenwriters. Maybe get a second screenwriter who's worked on like some maybe Steven Universe or Adventure Time to work with Wolverton, because I feel like her screenwriting with that kind of screenwriting.
Yeah, Wolverton is very good. I've noticed with like the traditional fantasy fairy tale stuff. Doing something that's very wild and wacky
like Adventure Time or Steven Universe, that could help. That could support her very well.
Oh yeah, man! If Rebecca Sugar got to help touch this movie, heck, make it a musical, and it would have been fun to do. But other than that, it's a very weak film. I don't think it's worth anyone's time.
It's like I said, it's maddening if you can't get behind the plot. Oh yeah, and you're gonna love this. Alice is also the reason Wonderland starts falling apart. So our hero is also the villain of destruction. This kind of reminded me of a superhero movie that came out called The Flash, where, get this, I noticed Alice and the Flash go back in time with a chronosphere.
Oh my gosh,
and they go through a wave of memories. Alice is literally going oceans, the Flash like filing waves.
The Flash is Alice Through the Looking Glass, but with an actual vision behind it.
With actual plot somehow. We've really stooped, that movie has stooped so low. I can't believe I just made that, like...
We figured that out right now. Wow.
Yeah. But it's so weird, because The Flash had, like, some good things behind it, but it was plagued with the bad shit that came from Ezra Miller. Mm. And whereas this movie's got a good performance from its lead, but it's plagued with some bad stuff that surrounding the movie. But to be fair, it's not like anyone got hurt compared to what Miller did. Anyway.
But Alice Through the Looking Glass, F tier, don't watch it.
No.
Then we get into a film. I think you and I are going to be split on this one, but from a very wonderful director comes Pete's Dragon.
I'm not split with this one. I think this movie is actually... let's put it this way. When it comes to the Disney remakes, and I'm not saying this to be negative, all the movies were had a very distinguished style. They all wanted to be a fairy tale. This movie felt like an art house film.
Oh yeah, this is from director David Lowery, one of my favorite directors working today. David Lowery, for me, this movie is an A-tier film.
A-tier, Pete's Dragon. And here's the thing, Pete's Dragon, I know jack shit about the original. I don't think I've even seen the original. I even asked my parents, like, did y'all even see that? I was like, nope, that one went under the radar.
Yeah, my brother saw this in theaters when he was little with my Nana, and he walked away just, like, loving it. Mm-hmm. So we all watched it for a family movie night when it came out.
Yeah.
Man, were we just surprised. For one, talking about the best part of the movie, Elliot the Dragon is... The animation on him is spectacular.
We're talking about the new one, right?
Yeah, the new one.
Okay, yes. Elliot. Okay, here's the funny thing, actually. Before we started the movie, I remember when we were on the Disney Plus thing, we saw the little poster and Elliot was on there, and it looked awkward. Like it was like a side profile of him. He had like a moray eel eye, and the teeth were showing. He's like, ugh, it looks so bad. But then he shows up, and you're like, oh,
It's like a puppy mixed with a lizard.
yeah.
And then you also have fascinating characters, and they're all played to perfection. Of course, Bryce Dallas Howard is amazing in this
And
movie.
of course, Robert Redford.
Robert Redford
Can never go wrong.
He shows up, and you're just, it's like a warm blanket.
Like
And-
Tom Hanks should be every now and then, yeah.
And then Carl Urban is the villain of this movie.
But not in, but he's a villain that's very standard in that he knows about a dragon and tries to cash it in for money, but they thankfully don't make him one note. Well, okay,
they don't make him one note. They
don't make him annoyed. They don't make him Clayton or
Yeah.
or Warp from Atlantis for that matter. That would have really destroyed the movie for me if I'm being honest.
But really what it is at the center of it is this really beautiful story about family. They give you a very tough opening that you're very surprised about.
Yeah.
And then what you get is this really bittersweet story that takes its time.
Yeah.
But heck, my brother would have been like, what at this time? He would have been like 8 or 9 when he saw this film.
Yeah.
And, well, actually, no, it came out in...
2016, 2017, I
Okay,
would say.
so no, he was like 11 or 12 at this
Okay.
point. Sorry, David. But yeah, my little brother, under 13 years old, came out of this movie like, it was so good!
Yeah.
And, okay, so if it's hitting like under 13, the under 13 crowd, I've talked with other people who were kids when they saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were like, yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, like I said, this might as well be an art house film because there's not really a lot of action or any like big any emotional set pieces in the fact that like say we're not getting
it's
like
manufactured.
it's manufactured like something in Jungle Book, put it that way. That's like a good example of something that's manufactured to perfection. This is something manufactured from something from like a simple drawing board of just like, okay, we've got Elliot, we've got a dragon, and this great family dynamic. And it's all, here's the funny thing also, it all feels very, I won't say stock, but very standard. Like when the kid gets separated from Elliot for a little bit, but he starts learning more about the real world. And then you get a sequence where he's with the family. And in any other movie, I would have watched this scene and said, oh, let me guess, Elliot's going to see him and get sad. But for some reason here, I was saying, oh, is Elliot going to see him and get sad? And when I saw it, I actually felt bad for him.
Yeah, this feels like kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy and like all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, in that an indie filmmaker got to touch it and make it style on a big budget. And this feels like the best of a studio coming together with a director
and like saying,
and
hey,
crafting something that is absolutely beautiful.
yeah, like, look, this isn't to say Disney thinks this way about this movie. It's like, oh, you want to take this kind of iffy movie we made a long time ago and make something of it? Okay, go for it. That just feels like the mindset. And the thing is, look, he could have just made a basic, he could have just made Air Bud but with a dragon, but he didn't do that. He made Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, E.T. He made another classic mystical pet movie, if you want to call it that.
And I really, really love the way that this film comes together. It's a brilliant film from David Lowery, and it's not the last time we'll hear from him in this.
Oh no! If I had one small like I won't even say criticism. This is like me as like if I were a director. I think the scene where the family sees the dragon. Okay, thank God they don't play the dragon reveal for too long in this movie. Lowery breaks that trope. Thank you, Lowery. You are by that. Yeah. Okay. I would have. Again, I don't know how anyone would react to seeing a dragon, but I feel like I probably would have done maybe a few more takes on the reaction to the dragon. I feel like Dallas's as well as Redford's response I feel like is good.
Oh yeah,
because he's already at heart he feels like he's seen this thing before. But I feel like Howard should have had more of like a whoa like kind of response, but like really screaming almost. But that's just me. That's just a small little director in me kind of going at the movie, and that's not even. It doesn't even bring the movie down from its A tier. It's still up there.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film. I feel like if you have kids, this is a great one to watch with them.
It's an art house film, like I said, compared to everything else before.
It's a slow-moving art house film for kids.
But it's only an hour and 50 minutes too.
Yeah, it's not too long. It's a very pleasant watch, and I highly recommend it. It's a very emotional ride. It's a very good film.
Yeah, it's an emotional gut punch at times. Yeah.
So now let's get into a movie that I need to make so many apologies for the years of bashing it.
Oh.
From director Bill Condon, we have Beauty and the Beast.
This one's going to be a very mixed bag of a movie for me.
So I'm just going to throw this out here. It's C tier. This is like the one movie in C tier I have where
I'm leaning in D tier.
It's fine.
I'm leaning in the D tier because to me, Beauty and the Beast is still such a classic, and this but kind of like another movie, Lion King, this just felt like something that just like didn't need to be touched. And then when I say that, I don't mean, oh, they destroyed my childhood. It's like, no. If anybody, okay, I'm not trying to sound like a smartass when I say this, but if anyone out there actually has that mindset towards something like, this movie destroyed my childhood, I have something sad to tell you. You didn't have a childhood to begin with. Anyways, that's not my mindset. My mindset was like, it's such a classic. You don't need to do anything. If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. Or baroque here. Not the baroques.
I really feel like for this one though, so many people have said, "Oh, this was made maliciously." It's like I don't feel that from Condon's direction.
I can't say it was made
Everyone
maliciously.
feels like they want to be here,
but it was misguided.
And I think they really did Emma Watson dirty in directing her
and post, yeah,
and getting her ready. Like everyone has said, it was auto-tuned, but Sideways has a great video where he has talked about that actually wasn't auto-tuned. It was the way the music was mixed, and I'm not blaming the sound or audio mixers. I know people are like, "Oh, you're blaming the little guys." We heard that they were working on that sound mix 2 weeks before the movie came out. Literally down to the wire. I can't imagine working under that pressure was going to yield the best results. But I want to apologize to this movie because for years I would have been like, this is the worst of the worst. This is F. This is awful. I hate it.
For a while I thought that until Lion King came out.
But now I look back on it, I was so way too harsh on this movie. This was not made maliciously. This was made with a lot of, I feel, love for the original that they were scared to touch and do anything big and drastic. They do add stuff here and there, but they are really just doing it because they want to try and do something new, but it feels like they're too scared to touch what they know works.
Yeah, what they know works. And here's the other thing. If you were, let's put it this way, the movies up to this point, they were fine. Like, they were all pretty fine. There was maybe one dud with Alice Through the Looking Glass, and not everybody went to go see Pete's Dragon, sadly. But I want to say this is definitely the movie, if anything, because this is also where they start really touching into their classics, like Jungle Book, then we go into Beauty and the Beast. I want to say this is where the chinks in that live-action remake armor start to show.
Now, there are still some sequences that are spectacular. The Gaston number, because Luke Evans is great as Gaston. I think Josh Gad is very strong.
Yeah.
But the song number itself, very fun.
Yeah.
Be Our Guest is legitimately this creative powerhouse. And I think I do like the added song Evermore that the Beast sings.
Yeah.
Dan Stevens sings it very well. It's a very beautiful song. And it's a very good replacement from the Broadway versions, If I Can't Love Her.
Oh, okay.
It's a very solid addition. And again, I don't feel like it was made maliciously. I do wish the Beast was a practical effect like they were going to do.
Yeah.
But I can understand maybe Dan Stevens couldn't do it.
And it was just going to take a lot of time to make and all that money and everything.
And if I imagine that Dan Stevens would have done it because he is a very dedicated actor if he wasn't going to hurt him health-wise. And I don't want any movie to ever hurt an actor.
No, yeah.
And Dan Stevens is really good as the Beast. Emma Watson is the one where everyone has a question mark. I wonder if that's just because this was her first big movie since she played Hermione.
Yeah, I want to say that too. Again, here's the thing, y'all. I saw before this movie came out, and before the Harry Potter movies ended, I want to say she was in a movie. She was in a movie with Logan Lerman and Ezra Miller. It was called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It was actually a pretty solid movie, if I'm being honest.
She's very good.
She's very good. So I think the reason we're bashing on her with this movie is because, well, she's playing Belle in the live-action Beauty and the Beast remake, so a lot was riding on her shoulders. Now, I'm not going to straight up go down and say this is the worst performance I've ever seen. It's definitely not the strongest Belle performance I've ever seen, but there's other things that kind of go against the movie, and it's not Watson's fault. Like, put it this way: here's a little aesthetic thing that happens in the original. Belle is the only person in the village who wears blue. Like, she wears white and blue. Nobody else wears blue. But there's only one other person in the movie that does wear blue. Who is that? The Beast. So, with this movie, you've got her in her blue. I guess, well, okay, let me get to it. The reason why is because, of course, it shows that she stands out from the rest of the crowd. Now, this movie's trying to do something very similar by having her father, as well as everybody else, explicitly say, you're so, like, oh, you're so weird, or her father say, you're ahead of your time. It's like... But the more you just talk about it, it's like, instead of actually showing her and how weird she is, and that, I mean, it's just, there's just a lot of misguidance.
Yeah, it's a lot of show don't tell, which is a shame, because I feel like there are moments this film could really use show don't tell very well.
Yes.
And it is For me, the reason it's C tier is I do find it to be okay. If you like this movie, great.
Yeah.
Bill Condon, I still think, is a good director.
Yeah,
And
other good cast members in this: Ewan McGregor as Lumiere, and Sir Ian McKellen, I believe, as Cogsworth, and Emma Thompson as Mrs. Potts. You couldn't get any better than that.
And you have Audra McDonald in here just singing some beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there are people who have dissected this movie a little too hard and gone, and I hate to say this because I've done this too, that they go way too deep into it and to say why it's bad.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, y'all, let's take a step back and say
why this doesn't work for you. And,
yeah.
And this doesn't work for me because, like I said, a lot of misguidance and a couple of scenes that, well, not to get too technical, but a couple of scenes that just come a little bit at the wrong moment and compared to other scenes. And also just, I don't know. Even on an act, not so much in acting, but on a screenwriting front, just on how things are executed. Just, I don't know. It's not that it felt, you're right. It's not that it came out of malicious intent, but it's just the misguidance and whatever or not even just misguidance, just the, what's the right word? The nervous or anxiousness to go into something a little different definitely holds this movie down for me from, really reaching.
But I also think some of the audience interaction, like Emma Watson had to leave social media after this movie with how, like, it was as bad as how people treated Anne Hathaway when she was younger in the 2000s.
Or even worse, in the same year this movie came out, we also had The Last Jedi and Kelly Marie Tran, what she suffered through that year. God, I wanted to give that actress a hug on the street after that movie.
Yeah, and I don't think, and like, okay, so an actor doesn't do a great job, it happens.
It happens, yeah.
And Emma Watson, it's definitely not done with malicious intent. I could tell she was trying. It's just, there was a lot of misguidance, and there was a lot to learn from said movie.
Yeah. If any other way to close this out, well, when this movie came out, some people, I have a lot of friends who love Disney, and people were asking me, did you like the live action Beauty and the Beast? And to which my response was, oh yeah, I really loved The Shape of Water. Well, we can end it like that.
Hey everybody, Michael here. So we ended up having a pretty big episode, so this is the end of part 1. We'll be back next week with part 2. See you then. Friends on Film is produced by Michael Andrew Dinan, T.M. Len, and Benjamin Trevino. Written by Michael Andrew Dinan and Benjamin Trevino. Music by Jared Walker, and logo by Corbin Clymer.